Hello, welcome to our first, Chaldea's first live interview session here on our YouTube channel. Thank you for joining us. I'm here today with Brandon Marino. Brandon, welcome.
Hello, thank you so much. I'm super excited.
This is so much fun. I mean, like we see each other from time to time, not nearly as often as we would like to, or at least not as much as I would like to, performing a couple of times on set, a couple times, several times at Bad Animals, in doing voiceover work. And here's a chance to actually talk to each other.
Yeah, without the impending, get back on set. Stop eating
Right.
donuts.
I know, it's always so crazy on set that you don't really get a chance to be present with people, and so this is great. So thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it. For anybody watching, Brandon Marino is one of our lead actors in the Chaldea series. Chaldea's story has several storylines, kind of like Game of Thrones. It goes between Daenerys and Jon Snow and whoever the other ones are. And I love, anyway. And we have Chaldea's story is structured similarly. And so we have several character storylines, and Jonas Octani is played by Brandon Marino. And of all the storylines, we kind of think of the Yo story as the center storyline, and everything else is running parallel to it. So in many ways, Brandon is our lead in the story. If you've watched chapter 1, you might be thinking, wait, I didn't see Brandon in chapter 1. So you're getting a preview of what Yo will look like when Yo becomes an adult, because the first chapter that has, the only Yo chapter that's been released at the time of this broadcast is chapter 1, which is a backstory about Yo as a child. And in the very next Yo chapter, which will be in chapter 6, which will be, I guess, coming out around March. I should have looked up the date. We will right very early in that chapter do a time jump 5 years forward, and suddenly Brandon will be playing in a live action film clip that we filmed a number of years ago. So that's a little bit of setup for everyone. So but I want to Brandon, I want to talk a little bit about you before we jump into talking about Chaldea. So where, a little bit of background, like you live in Hollywood now, but you weren't raised there, right? You were raised in Washington, were you, or what?
Yeah, I was born at the University of Washington Medical Center. I was raised in Issaquah, which, if you know the Seattle area, about 30 minutes east. Yeah, raised there for most of my life. I lived in St. Louis for a little bit while I was a professional wrestler, and then I became an actor and moved back to Seattle. And then right after filming the first live action sequence for Chaldea, I moved down to LA.
Yeah, and that was, I think, 2016, maybe something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned the wrestling. Yeah, you didn't head directly to acting.
No.
You veered into wrestling. So what was that like? Tell me about that.
Well, I grew up a martial artist, so I started martial arts when I was 7, and then kind of as you go through school, they're like, "Oh, what are you going to be when you grow up?" And I'm like, "Well, martial arts is like the only thing I love next to comic books." So, like, I could be a stunt guy, I could be a pro wrestler. Like, that's the only things I can do with these skills. There's a stunt academy where you had to be, I think, 20 or 21 to start, and then there was a pro wrestling school in Washington where they would let me start training while I was still, I think I was still like 15 when I started training for that. I had my first match when I was 17, and then I did that for a few years and got hurt. And in the meantime, I got kind of addicted to the storytelling nature of wrestling. But I was like, well, I could keep getting hurt doing this, but there's also safer ways to tell stories. And so I moved into acting, and then.
No, I don't know if that's personal, but did you recover from being? I mean, you don't look hurt. I mean, you okay?
I blew in a tryout match for a company called Ring of Honor. I tore my ACL. Mid-match, I finished the match because that's what you do when you're a wrestler. I also finished the match with a concussion one time, and then a match again, later that night, a second one. But yeah, I finished the match, and then 3 weeks later, I'm like, this hasn't healed. I should get it checked out. And he was like, oh, your ACL is gone. So yeah, had a reconstruction surgery, and then got into acting, and then I tore it again and had another surgery. But I'm it's strong. I still do martial arts and stunts type things on it. Yeah, mostly I'm pretty solid.
Yeah, yeah. So how did you make the bridge into acting then? What sort of how did you make that transition?
It was just I was working at Starbucks in St. Louis, at the corner of Chippewa and Lansdowne for anybody in 314. And I had a couple coworkers who were actors, and we would always kind of talk movies, and they had a lot of advice. And like the first bit was just to start classes. So I started at St. Louis Community College with a really wonderful teacher, and yeah, just kind of went from there. And then I realized there's a lot going on in Seattle acting wise. So I moved back home, and started working in Seattle.
Right. Now I know you from what I know of you, your credits and our working together. It's all been on film. Did you entertain going into theater at all, or were you just like, no, I want to be on, I want to do camera work?
I did. I did a couple plays while I was in St. Louis, and then for a moment I had this ambition of like musical theater before I realized I couldn't sing. It was like physical, but then I'm like, oh, I can't sing. This is not going to work out. And then yeah, I came back to Seattle. I did some Shakespeare in Seattle, and I actually went to London for a semester course at Lambda and trained Shakespeare there for 3.5 months.
Right.
Really wonderful. I love the stage, and I miss the stage, but I really, film is my larger calling of the two.
Yeah. So what do you like about it?
About
acting.
film?
Acting. Yeah.
Stepping outside yourself, and also in a lot of, not to get too like woo-woo about it, but also kind of stepping into yourself a little bit more, and having to work and saying, where does that live in me?
Right.
There's that kind of old saying, like this sounds so like woo about it all, but there's that old thing, like people contain multitudes, and all of us are the way we are just because we have a certain experiences and certain stories live in our head that inform our decisions. And so kind of imagining what are the stories and decisions that would lead me to do this thing that's on this page, and that was really exciting. And then also, like, I love, I grew up on Star Wars and Batman and Zorro and all these things, and so like that imagination, that like escapism and grand adventure and stuff, super.
So speaking of Batman, I happen to know that you have set for yourself a career goal, an aspiration, to be the first Black Batman. Is that right?
Yeah, that is. Yeah, I said earlier, like, I love martial arts and I love Batman and comics and stuff. Yeah, it's kind of from this thing growing up, playing on the playground, and it's like, we're playing superheroes, and it's like, oh, I want to be Batman. It's like, you can't, skin. It doesn't work. And so that kind of stuff. But yeah, that's a thing that sticks with you, and I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that can relate. And so it just kind of like, why not? Like, why, there truly is no reason. Batman's, Batman is bigger than that, or the idea of Batman is bigger than that. And wanting to expand representation is something that's really important to me. Lately, it's my ambition. There's a character called Nightwing, who is the first Robin. He turns into his own hero, and then in some stories he does become Batman, and I think he's a little better at it than Bruce Wayne. So that's kind of the path I'm taking now for comic nerds out there. That's my
nice. And I Now, there was a rumor going around on set when we worked together that you always you always were wearing something with Batman.
Yes, yes. I always have Batman gear on me. I actually just realized that I am wearing a Batman belt, seat buckle belt.
There you go.
I also, like, this is my usual gear of the moment is by a company called Hero Within that makes kind of stealth things. This is for the 80-year Batman anniversary.
Nice.
1939 when Detective Comics 29 came out and Batman made his debut to the world. Yeah, I have, I constantly, you will never find me without some kind of nerd gear on. It's
nice.
It's legitimately impossible.
Well, hopefully Chaldea will be a small stepping stone to this this wonderful aspiration. We are all rooting for you, Brandon.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And it is kind of what I was saying earlier. It is a dream come true because I also grew up on Lord of the Rings as well. We were talking before we started about Lord of the Rings, and Lord of the Rings was one of the first times I recognized that I wanted to be in movies because I thought what the stuff people did was so cool. And I also kind of subliminally realized that in this sword and sorcery thing, everybody was white. All of the brown people were kind of under the Urukai thing. And it was like, okay, well, I guess that's a place to fit in. So to be a lead in a thing where I have a sword and there's magic and there's all this stuff and it's in this genre, that, is not lost upon me. That's, that is a dream come true.
Oh, good. Well, great. We will endeavor to, make this as big a hit as we can so that it will help you towards your goal as well. So let's talk a little bit about your character, Yonnus Octani. I'm going to say just a little bit about Yo to set it up for in case anybody's watching who hasn't seen the first chapter. Real briefly, Yo is he comes from a troubled past, family, domestic abuse from his stepfather. In the first chapter, slight spoilers here, I suppose, but just to set it up for our conversation, he ends up running away from all that, and in the process frees two other slaves, Lons and Kala, who become good friends of his, and is set as teenagers. They're living on the streets in a fantasy city called Ogstad, sort of a fantasy version of a Germanic city from the Middle Ages, and at the end of chapter 1, he kind of goes. He sort of becomes enlisted, recruited by Lothari von Cronenberg, who is a noble and is, here, I have a great house and rescued you from the streets. And oh, by the way, I'm the guild master for the Black Daggers, a notorious guild of assassins and thieves. In the next chapter of the story, we're going to jump forward to Yo as a young adult, along with Lons and Kala, who are played by William Poole and Mariah Zook, and Arion, who is Yo's best friend from childhood, played by Connor Marks, and Lothari is played by Kevin McLean. And so that kind of sets us up for having a conversation about this character. So what comes to mind for you when you think about Yo? When you think about when you go to perform Yo, either in live action or maybe in voiceover too, what goes through your mind in terms of getting into character, if you will?
Basically swagger. I think of swagger, which is I don't know if I always have it in real life, but I do my best to bring it to Yo.
That is not what I expected. I didn't really try to anticipate how you would answer this question, but I love the answer. I mean, that's I'm thinking of these deep things, troubled past and daddy issues and stuff like that. No, swagger. That's what I think of.
I think he's always trying to prove himself. I think there's a part of him that wants to be, he wants to be great. And I think that there's a strong part of him that like, why would you let me just get out of my way? I got this. Like, like, I can do that. I am capable. I'm enough to do this thing. Like,
that's fabulous, because that's so much better than anything I would have suggested you say. I mean, I think that is a wonderful, wonderful thing to say. And it's I took you've taken classes in acting. I took some classes in directing, and one of the takeaways from me from film school was that acting, a great performance is a collaboration between a director and an actor, and you bring a lot to this role. You get it. What do you think that you might have brought to the role that maybe wasn't what I intended? That's a tricky question. We didn't rehearse this, guys. I'm just throwing these at random, testing your ad lib skills here.
I don't exactly know, but I think about my first audition with Amy Renee, and my most vivid memory of the audition is there's a part in it in which Yo screams for whatever reason, and I just remember like wanting to commit all the way and just like leave it all on the floor. And I remember like leaving the office like tired from it. I'm like, that's all I don't know, but like right. That's I did the thing that I wanted to do. So that's a really good question. I don't know.
I'm winging it here, trying to come up with good questions.
Yeah,
This is the first time I've interviewed an actor. Obviously, I've worked with actors a lot and done a lot of casting types of settings, but it's kind of fun to just like do an interview. Like, oh wow, okay, how do you? What's your method, Brandon? Like, what's
a lot of coffee.
Perfect. That helps with the swagger, right?
Oh yeah.
Well, let's talk about, you mentioned the audition. I think there's an interesting story here that I know I want to talk about, and I think you do too, because there's, I think we both like to be able to address what some might have as a concern, which is here we've cast you as a Black person playing a Middle Eastern character. So, and we, it was, I want to say how much we really wanted. We looked very, we looked a long time to find a Middle Eastern actor to play this part. And we had, because I was very committed to that, we did Amy Renee, our casting director at the time. She had offices in Seattle and in Los Angeles. And she worked with about 15 different agencies. But we are an independent production. We didn't have a lot of money. So we certainly, and for the scale that we were willing to pay, she just couldn't find us someone who fit the character. Obviously casting a lot about it. I mean, you can have a great actor, but if it's not the right character, it's just often that's as simple as that. And so we had, and actually, as we were approaching doing the voiceover recording for season 1, and we were getting everybody cast for the first season, Yo was the last character that was uncast, and certainly one of our most important, if not the most important character of the series, and just couldn't find the right person to do this. And at some point, Amy Renee said, I just don't know anyone else. And so I had, and we were starting to get desperate. So I had this thought of we had found some great Middle Eastern actors for other roles. And so I started asking other Middle Eastern actors. I said, hey, do you know someone who can play, we're having trouble filling this role. And it was Megan Crimi Nasser who recommended us to you, or you to us. And thank God. And Megan said, well, I know somebody who is, they're not Middle Eastern, but I think they could pass. And Megan, by the way, is also, in addition to an actor, she's also a makeup artist. I think she said, hey, I think with the right hair, makeup, and wardrobe combination, I think this guy, Brandon Marino, could do this role. Now, did she talk to you?
Yes, she did, and I submitted. And so there's this like thing that happens when you're an ethnically ambiguous actor, is that all the time, particularly white people are like, oh, you could be anything. I'm like, well, I'm not, but well, yeah, thanks. And so I submitted, and I got the feedback like, well, you're not real. You don't really. It was either something like, you could tell that I obviously wasn't Middle Eastern, and I'm like, this is the one time where I can't pass as any. I swear, like I don't know, like I was like, I've encountered the one production that cares. It was like, it's great, but it was also a little. I was a little stumped at the time, and like obviously, my appreciation and understanding of the situation has evolved over 5 years, and like that, I mean, I think it is. I really appreciate that you did your very best. But like you were saying, I was the last person cast because you exhausted every option. It was a no the first time because you were committed. I think that is something that's really important.
Yeah. Well, Megan is forever. Well, we adore Megan as an actor. And by the way, anybody watching curious who this Megan, you will see her in the next chapter of chapter 2 of that's being released on Monday. So you won't have to be curious for too long. She plays this character Rubati. So yeah, we adore her anyway. And then the fact that she connected us with you, and it all worked out. And so we're definitely really happy that that we made this connection and that you're playing this character for us.
I'm super grateful as well. I'm glad that, I mean, I'm grateful that I was, that it circled back around in that way.
Right. Yeah. So we had we're coming up to we're gonna have show a little clip. We're gonna show a clip from a live action film called The Rathskeller. It's part of the next Yo chapter, which is chapter 6 in the series. That chapter is called Assassins of Chaldea. And I want to set this up just a little bit. We mentioned earlier that Yo and Lons and Kala get rescued by Lotari, and Arion gets dragged into this this mix. And 5 years later, Yo is basically running a crew for this thieves guild. And Lons and Kala and Arion are the crew. And
Yo is running it.
Yeah. And, I think Yo is in charge of pretty much anything he does, right? So in this clip, Lotari has advised you and the others that you're going to go on a mission, and but he's kind of dogged you a little bit in telling you that you're not going to have a very important role on this mission because for whatever reason. And that's the setup for this. The other characters have left the room, and you and Lotari are alone to discuss it. So, all right, Adam, if you could play that clip for us.
So, what's my part?
You will play my valet.
Gee, how exciting.
I'd be grateful we even included you.
I bring in triple what anyone else does.
It isn't about earnings. It's about attitude. That chip on your shoulder. You just make my point. In this line of work, emotions get you killed. Lock it down.
Easy for you to say.
Before you can move forward in this world, Jonas, you need to leave your past behind. I'll look after this for you. It puts you in a mood. Tonight, I need you all in. If you screw up and we get caught, we'll all be executed. Don't fuck up!
Hey, it's me.
Nicely done, Brandon. Nicely done. Do you remember filming that?
I do remember filming it.
I say that because it was so long ago. It was 4 years ago that we filmed this.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, I remember shooting that scene. It was a blast. It was so fun.
Well, it feeds into we have a question from chat. Somebody
cool.
asked, somebody asked what your favorite moment was on set. I guess from filming. I don't know if they mean the Rathskeller, but you could take that more broadly. No spoilers, of course.
No spoilers. The camaraderie on set between us and the Black Daggers crew. I genuinely just love performing with Connor and Will and Mariah. Like they're so. It was so much fun, and we bounced off each other wonderfully. I felt, and it was just the downtime in between shooting, like it was just the best was having those three on set with me.
Right.
It was great.
And and in that clip we just saw, you and Kevin McLean, who played Latari, both just performed so well in that scene. I really love that clip. I get goosebumps when I watch that clip, and I've seen it literally 100 times.
Yeah, this is my first time seeing it. I do remember there was one take where it's there's always the kind of dragging you chase as an actor of, oh, like you're in it. And I definitely remember like that was one of the times where I was like, yeah, it was a great moment.
Well, I remember the ending of that scene when Latari stops you with the sword, and says, "Don't screw up." And as the script was written, I don't remember what the original script said, but it was something, it wasn't there wasn't a lighthearted sort of shrugging it off like what we filmed, right? It was sort of like probably just like gruntled and leave. And we were in the middle of filming it, and Steve said, "Hey, I just want to do another take and have Brandon just like go, hey, it's me, like, because it's that swagger you talked about earlier." And that was a nice moment of inspiration from Steve, my co-director. And it's funny how on set you'll have an idea right in the moment for a different way to do a line. I mean, and actors come up with it, and sometimes it's the director, sometimes it's an actor, sometimes it's just somebody watching. It was a lot of fun.
It was so much fun. It was so much fun. Yeah.
Well, and that camaraderie, you do a lot of, there's a lot of subsequent work that you have done voiceover work with Connor Marks as Yo and Arion, and also another live action film called The Reorg, which won't be out until a future season. But there is, you guys have a great chemistry. These two characters have a great chemistry because you and Connor have a great chemistry on set. And a lot of your lines in the voiceover realm that we'll get to in the future, a lot of lines are just ad-libbed by you two. I mean, Steve and I learned to just kind of let you guys go. And you can do that in voiceover because it's really, it's not time. The time equals money thing is not as much in play in a voiceover studio, and there's time to play around with it.
Yeah, Connor is one of my best friends in real life as well as this project. So it's, I feel like there's a chaotic energy that happens when the two of us get in the same room. I hope translates well for Yo and Arion. But
it translates great.
It's such a blast. He's so phenomenal to work with and just so present constantly. And he's truly a phenomenal just actor and human, and I love him very much.
He's a real professional. I gotta say, directing Connor always keeps me on my toes, right? He's an actor that is always inspiring me to be better and making sure that I have my shit together, that things are thought out.
He's always working and he's always thinking.
Yeah.
Is my observation. Yeah.
So we have another question from chat. What was the hardest thing about playing Yo? This is great. We're getting you. See, this training here will serve you later when you're interviewed on like late night television.
You're getting my color wheel as my entire body stops while my brain tries to process. I think the thing that was kind of on my mind the most was I wanted to get the accent down as something that I was. I was very, you're always kind of conscious of, and that's another thing I love about the world is that everyone isn't English,
right?
As much like I come from quite a lot of British stock, so I have an appreciation of all things English, but it is a little tiresome to watch these things where everybody's from London. So that is something that the kind of global sense of the world.
Well, it's funny because for Yo is I remember a long time ago, Steve and I had a question about Yo's accent, and we kind of, without thinking about it, kind of assumed it would be an Arab accent because it's a Middle Eastern character, and then wait, no, he's been raised in Hesse. He's been raised in this Germanic kingdom. He's going to have a German accent. And I was also curious I had to do a little study about what happens with people who are second generation immigrants usually don't have the accent of their parents. They have the accent of the culture they're raised in, right? So was like, Yo's got a German accent, and so you have an accent.
I actually am a little bit German, so I'm like, oh my god, I get to there was all these cool things, when the audience gets to the Rathskeller, pause and look at the set. Like the set is so gorgeous.
Oh, thank you.
But there is these things of Odin and all that stuff, and my grandfather's Norwegian, and so I'm like, oh my god, I get a small tribute to that part of me that I when is that opportunity gonna come again?
And that's a good excuse to say, to recognize Jordan Mitchell, our art director for the set of Rathskeller, and Layla Aram Panahi, who was the art director for that, and Bandersnatch. Damon, Vanny, and Sean did a great job of building all the sets and all the props and securing set dress and all that stuff like that. And Rathskeller, for anybody who's curious, is a German word for basically an underground bar. I think so it kind of captures the feel of a Germanic bar underneath in the basement.
It's gorgeous. There's barrels on the wall, and there's all this, it's so I have so many videos just of I'm just going around set, getting in close because it holds up to scrutiny. You're like, oh, this is a real place.
No, thank you.
Phenomenal. It's incredible. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, I'd like to talk a little bit about a couple other things that you've done outside of Chaldea. But before that, before we leave Chaldea, is there anything else you wanted to talk about related to Chaldea, or anything else you wanted to say in terms of Yo, the production?
Just that I really am grateful to be a part of this. There's
Oh, Brandon, we're grateful to have you. I mean, we're a small independent production up here, and we're a YouTube program, you know.
Absolutely. And things of this scale, it is so unusual for you know, an independent production, a production that's you know, on YouTube, to have this scope and scale in the world. And like, whoever's watching, when I tell you that it is a complete universe, like it's not, I mean, it's all made up to an extent, but it's not like made up on the fly. Like all these things like exist. Like I can ask Peter a question about like, oh, what's this? And he's like, oh, well, several centuries ago, this happened, these people came to war there, and then there's a thing that happened, and it came from the sky, and everyone died, and this is why, you know, this is why that character has a lip.
well, Brandon, you know, the circles that Steve Hunter and I run in, I mean, this is de rigueur. I mean, we're role players. We play Dungeons and Dragons and Burning Wheel. I mean, yeah, we're geeks.
Yeah, it's
we're living the dream.
And it's I mean, one thing that I love is complete world building, and so being able to be a part of such a complete world is so exciting to me.
Well, thank you. That's you're very generous with your comments. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I did want to mention you've played some fun characters here. When we talked about your audition earlier, and when you did your callback audition, you phoned it in from Spokane because you were on the set of Z Nation,
I was.
where maybe you didn't quite get the Black Batman role, but you got the Black Elvis role.
Yeah. I mean, as far as he was concerned, he was the Elvis. There is no other. He was the king.
Yeah.
That was a blast because the week of the first audition was also, I think, the week of I think I auditioned for Z Nation like within a few days of that as well. So there's a lot of just kind of whirlwinding happening. And I was like in Spokane. I remember like, you know, setting up my laptop and trying to stack it on like books and like moving furniture to get it at you know, at appropriate like eye level and all this stuff. And I'm like, what is happening? I ran around in a sequin cape as Elvis the King earlier today, fighting zombies. And now like I'm auditioning via Skype for this, you know, D&D sword and sorcery like thing. What is happening?
Right.
It was so, yeah, it was great. It was so much fun.
Yeah, that was the connection on the audition was so bad. I mean, it was like so pixelated and stilted, but it didn't matter. We had already decided we were going to cast you. The callback was just a formality, you know.
That makes me feel very full. Thank you. I had no idea.
No, it was good. I mean, you always got to do a callback just to make sure. But
yeah. Oh, gosh.
Yeah, and then you have you played a number of roles. Somebody mentioned in chat you were just in a national Pepsi commercial.
Yes, I am. Yeah. If you're watching NFL, if you see a family, you know, exercising in the backyard and doing all these things, that is myself and one of my best friends, you know, in this national Pepsi commercial we shot in July.
Yeah. Well, you look great, I gotta say. Fabulous.
Thank you. It's all angles and tape.
Yeah. But one more round.
Yeah. That is a project with one of my best friends, Moses Olson, who is a writer, director, script doctor, producer, former martial artist. He's done everything under the sun, and we and before leaving to LA, we put this project together, One More Round. It's a fun black and white noir film. It shows off some of my martial arts and fighting skills. Spoiler alert. I don't know. But yeah, that lives on. I believe it lives on YouTube and Vimeo. I can also link it in my Instagram or something if anybody's interested. But it was so much fun. We are teaming up again to collaborate. It's been about, I mentioned Nightwing earlier. It's been about 3.5 years of my life campaigning to play Nightwing, and so now we're putting together a short film.
Nice.
Yeah, a short action film, very character driven. A lot of inspiration from the 70s and 80s and like kind of classic action cinema. Partly because I love the character. He's been in existence 80 years. Dick Grayson has, which is, as long as Wonder Woman, as long as certain iterations of the Flash or Green Lantern or all these other characters that get the spotlight. So he's he's been my favorite character since I was about 10. So
right,
figures might as well, go for it. So we're putting that together right now.
Right. Well, good. Well, best of luck with that, Brandon, and best of luck with your career, with coping with the confinements of the pandemic. I know that's difficult as an actor. These are tough times, but hopefully we're coming up on the end of that. And we will, and I really look forward to the next time you and I get to work together again, and whether it's a voiceover or a live action film. It'll probably be a little while. The pandemic has certainly set us back financially quite a bit. So we're kind of working at a slow pace, but fortunately we're young and many years ahead of us to finish this.
Yeah,
this
there's
series.
there's a lot of story. Let me tell you, anybody watching, it's been prepped out. It's awesome. It is.
Well,
it is
thank
awesome.
you. Thank you so much, Brandon.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Brandon, for joining us here. It was such a delight to see you and be able to talk about things that we wouldn't normally be able to talk about in our more professional roles that we do, to just hang out with you. It's a pleasure to know you and to be your friend. And that concludes our time today. Thank you out there for watching this. Those of you on our YouTube chat live. We will be back in 2 weeks where I will be interviewing Yasmin Aker, who plays the role of Sarva, who is another one of the lead characters of Chaldea. And her first chapter will be released on Monday. So you definitely want to check that out. All right. Thank you.
If you enjoyed this broadcast, you can support the channel by subscribing and sharing our videos on social media. Follow World of Chaldea on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And be sure to visit worldofchaldea.com for more videos, concept art, and behind-the-scenes content.